So you've likely seen the headlines coming out of Mali.
Yeah.
The military government there has just, well, announced the suspension of all political party activities.
That's right.
Okay, let's unpack this because it definitely raises a lot of questions. For this deep dive, we're diving straight into a recent Associated Press report to try and understand exactly what's happening.
Yeah, and our goal here isn't just the surface news. We want to really get into the sequence of events leading up to this.
Right.
What the military government is actually saying is behind it, and maybe touch on the potential ripple effects.
Right.
For Mali itself and its people, we'll try to stick to the key points, give you a clear picture without getting bogged down.
Absolutely. And this AP article, it's kind of our roadmap for this. It covers quite a bit, the actual suspension order, the reasons they gave, how activists are reacting, the history of military rule there, which is important context.
Crucial.
And also the bigger picture, like security challenges and Mali's, shifting international ties. So where's the best place to start to make sense of all this?
Well, I think the decree itself is the logical starting point.
Okay.
The AP report says Mali's military government announced it on state TV this past Wednesday.
Okay.
Stating that all political party and association activities are suspended. And the key phrase is, until further notice.
Until further notice. Wow. That's a big step.
It is a significant one.
And this wasn't just like an off-the-cuff remark. The article says it was an official decree signed by the transitional president, General Assimi Goïta.
That's right. Signed and official.
And the reason given, just reasons of public order, that feels, well, pretty vague, doesn't it?
It is quite broad, yeah. But the article immediately gives us some pretty important context that might shed light on what those reasons could actually mean.
Okay.
This suspension, it comes literally days after the first sort of major pro-democracy rally they've had since the military took power, which was almost 4 years ago now. So the timing is, it's hard to miss.
Right, that timing definitely stands out. The AP piece details this rally in Bamako. Hundreds of activists protesting a bill that aimed to actually dissolve political parties.
Exactly, dissolve them completely.
And they came out despite what the article calls threats from the government. That suggests some serious underlying tension.
It really does. And the article mentions pro-military youth actually tried to block the rally.
Physically block it.
Yeah, and police were there cordoning off the area, apparently to prevent clashes. And also another protest was expected this week. So it wasn't just a one-off thing.
Okay, so you can see the potential link there. The government might frame this suspension as being about public order to prevent more protests, more potential clashes.
Possibly, yeah. That could be the framing.
But what about the reaction from the pro-democracy side? The AP actually quotes one of the leaders from that weekend protest, Cheikh Oumar Doumbia.
Right, and Doumbia's reaction is very telling, I think. He basically said he wasn't surprised.
Not surprised.
Which kind of suggests they might have anticipated something like this from the current government. But crucially, he also said they would continue to defend democracy in Mali.
So they're not backing down.
Doesn't sound like it. Which, makes you wonder about the government's endgame here. Is the suspension meant to be permanent, or?
That determination is definitely something to watch. And to really get the picture, we need that history, like you said. The AP reminds us, Gen Goïta came to power through coups. Not one, but two.
2 coups, yeah. 2020 and 2021. That pattern of military intervention is pretty central to understanding the current moment.
Definitely.
And building on that, the article mentions a recent national political conference. What's interesting there is that this conference apparently suggested Gen Goïta should stay on as president.
Stay on? For how long?
For a renewable 5-year term.
5 years. Renewable. Wow, that's not exactly a short transition.
Not at all. Usually you'd expect a transitional government post-coup to be focused on, setting up elections relatively quickly. This suggests a different plan might be in place.
Which maybe, predictably, isn't going down well with everyone. The AP reports on a press conference. Civil society groups, political parties, labor unions. A real coalition.
Yeah, quite a broad group.
What was their main point?
Their message, this was on Sunday, was a direct call for a rapid and credible return to constitutional order.
Okay.
And they specifically mentioned needing transparent, inclusive, and peaceful elections. So a clear push from a significant chunk of Malian society for a return to democratic processes.
But trying to get that message out wasn't easy, was it? The article says police actually broke up that press conference.
They did, dispersed it, citing the risk of clashes with government supporters.
So, again, this tension and maybe actions to limit dissenting voices.
Precisely. And that leads into what a political analyst, Sheikh Umar Kanare, told the AP.
What's his take?
He basically believes the suspension hasn't really cooled things down. He actually anticipates more confrontations between the government and these pro-democracy groups.
So the opposite of achieving public order, potentially.
Potentially, yes. His analysis suggests this might actually escalate things rather than calm them.
And it seems like this tactic suspending political activity isn't entirely new for this government. The AP points out it happened before.
That's a really important observation in the article, yeah. They mention a previous suspension back in April of this year.
April. What was that ahead of?
It was just before something called an inter-Malian dialogue.
Okay, and what came out of that dialogue?
Well, according to the report, that dialogue resulted in the recommendation to extend the transition period from 2 years initially to 5 years.
Ah, the 5 years again?
The 5 years again. So you see a potential pattern, right? Suspend political activity, then make a key decision that consolidates or extends the military's time in power.
Right. It certainly makes you question the stated reasons for the suspensions.
It raises questions, definitely.
And while all this internal political stuff is happening, there are also shifts internationally. The AP just touches on it, but mentions Mali moving away from, like, traditional Western partners.
Yeah, cutting ties with some Western partners, particularly France, and building new partnerships, notably with Russia.
How does that play into things, do you think?
Well, it adds another really complex layer. It's a major shift in foreign policy, and it could affect everything from, international aid to diplomatic pressure regarding a return to democracy. Western leverage might be reduced.
Sure. And we can't forget the backdrop to all of this, the security situation.
Absolutely critical.
The AP reminds us Mali's been dealing with attacks from groups linked to al-Qaeda and the Islamic State for, what, over a decade?
Over a decade, yeah. And the threat hasn't gone away. The article says it's actually been growing.
And that's often the justification the military uses, right, for staying in power.
It's frequently cited, yes. The argument often goes that stability and security have to come first, especially when facing such significant threats, and that political activities can be destabilizing in that context.
Right. And just to be super clear for everyone listening, our goal here isn't to, take sides or endorse any viewpoint.
Not at all.
We're simply reporting on the information laid out in this Associated Press article, trying to give you a full understanding of the different pieces of this puzzle in Mali.
Exactly. Just providing the context, highlighting the different perspectives reported so you can form your own informed view.
Okay, so if we were to boil down this deep dive into the AP report, what are the main takeaways we should leave with?
I'd say the core points are: first, the official suspension of all political parties by the military government, citing public order.
Okay.
Second, the context that's happening right after pro-democracy protests against moves to further restrict political life.
Right, the timing.
Third, the history that the current government came to power via coups. Fourth, this pattern of suspending political activity before major decisions, like extending their own time in power. Then there's the clear pushback from civil society demanding elections. And finally, remembering this is all happening amidst serious ongoing security threats and those big shifts in international alliances.
It really is a complex picture, a nation at a really critical point. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah.
Given Mali's recent history, the coups, the security situation, which is very real, and now these moves to silence political opposition, what do you think the potential long-term consequences are? Suspending parties like this, what does that mean for the country's stability down the road in its democratic future, whatever that might look like?
And how do those internal politics interact with the outside influences, the international shifts?
Exactly. It's a lot to think about, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a clearer lens through which to view a really complex and evolving situation.